tonight, an update from the front lines in the fight against ISIS.
I'm not going back till the fight's finished, and ISIS has been crippled.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
And new documents from the bin Laden raid reveal the al-Qaeda leader was obsessed with attacking America again. Plus, Hillary Clinton finally comes out of hiding.
I will put it on my list for due consideration.
Should the press boycott Hillary Clinton? Ed Henry is here to respond to his heated exchange with the reclusive presidential candidate. Also, David Limbaugh, Juan Williams. Hannity starts right here, right now. Welcome to Hannity. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky earlier today began to, quote, filibuster the renewal of the Patriot Act. Here's some highlights.
The powers given to government should be enumerated. They're few and limited, the powers given to the government. But it's the opposite with your rights. Your rights are many and infinite. Your rights are unenumerated, and you do have a right to privacy.
And joining me now with reaction, Fox News contributor Karl Rove is with us. Sir, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. I watched a lot of this as it began today, about 1 o'clock this afternoon, 1:18. There's a lot of points I find myself in agreement with as somebody who supported the Patriot Act. And, you know, when you hear about large data mining of American citizens' information, I get concerned because I don't trust this government. This is the same government that, you know, used the IRS to go after conservatives. So I think the senator's making valid and good points. Is there a way to thread the needle here to go after the bad guys, which the Patriot Act was, I understood, supposed to do?
Well, look, I don't trust much of the government, but I do trust the National Security Agency. The last year for which we have numbers available on the bulk telephone data program, 22 people had access to that data, and they used it 300 times. And remember, that database consists of the number calling, the number called, and the date and time. Nothing else. It doesn't. They're not listening in on our calls. And this idea that we're going to repeal all of the Patriot Act, and not just Section 206 that has to do with that bulk phone program, but the entire act. Let's remind people what's in that act. In Title I, for example, there is a specific provision that allows the military to be called on in an incident involving WMD, because under the Posse Comitatus Act, they can't be involved in domestic incidents unless there's a special provision. That allows it. That would be repealed. Title II gets rid of the wall. Remember the discussion about how the FBI knew things about the 9/11 terrorists that could not legally... The wall of separation between intelligence and law enforcement, that's Title II, and the repeal of the Patriot Act, killing the Patriot Act, would reinsert the wall between domestic law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies so they could no longer share information. It also has the very important provisions that allow us to take international Internet traffic that passes through the U.S. networks. One bad guy in one part of the Middle East talking to another bad guy in the Middle East that comes through a U.S. network, for us to capture that and to look at the email traffic of bad guys abroad. The sneak and peek, the ability to go in and take a look at records without having to give your intended a copy of the search warrant. Roving wiretap so that you could follow an individual, not simply the cell phone that they had. The business records searches. All three of these were allowed to be used for terrorist incidents and terrorist activities. They've been heretofore used for drug dealers and Medicare fraud and business fraud. So if you don't want to use it for terrorists, then be at least consistent and say you shouldn't use it in any instance. But we simply said you can now use these commonly used tools of law enforcement for things involving terrorism. Title III, financing. This is the way that we clamp down on the flow of money from Americans inside the United States to the Middle East to fund terrorist organizations. That would be gone if they repealed the Patriot Act. Border security provisions. This allowed us to take an illegal alien that we caught at the border, whom we suspected of having terrorist ties, and detain them for as long as was necessary to figure out if they were a bad guy. Otherwise, we had to let them out within a certain period of time, and they disappeared into the society. And terrorist definitions. We added cyber terrorism. We identified a whole series of things that were not included in the law because before 9/11 we didn't contemplate contemplated, including material support of terrorism, which is one of the most powerful tools that we have to get bad guys here who are attempting to go join the bad guys there.
Carl,
and killing the Patriot Act kills all of these provisions.
I agree with all of those provisions. What security can we put in place? Because it has been, and it's been revealed that so many of people's private, personal emails, exchanges, et cetera, is being data mined into the government. I don't think they're going through it all because they don't have the manpower, the time, or experience, or finances to do that. But I think Paul does have a point in that sense that that part has to be changed somewhat. You don't have any problems with that at all?
Well, I don't have with the National Security Agency. Now, remember, though, there are three options here. The option is status quo, let the National Security Agency collect the bulk data, and under the direction, under certain rules inside the National Security Agency, a limited number of people can access it, but they have to justify that access internally. Another way to do it is the USA Freedom Act, which says, look, we can still do that, but the telephone companies will hold the data, and you have to go to all of the telephone companies when you have an incident. Those 300 times, you wouldn't simply be able to query the database. You'd have to go to every telephone company in the country and say, did you have a bad, here's a bad number from abroad that called somebody in the United States. Who did they call? When did they call them? You'd have to go to every telephone company. And you and I both know that in these instances, sometimes the most important thing you have is speed, and that would slow it up. And not only that, but the USA Freedom Act is unconstitutional in this sense. It has judges appointing members of the executive branch who are allowed to litigate against other elements in the executive branch. That's a violation of the separation of powers, and yet it's in there. And the third alternative is simply end the program altogether, which is a disaster for America.
All right, Karl Rove, thank you for your position on this. Joining me now with more reaction, Congressman Renewal Labrador. He is the Western co-chair of Rand Paul for President. I think Karl does make a number of good points. I am concerned about civil liberties, national security, data mining to the extent that it's been reported has been happening. But as it relates to Title I, military being brought in, posse comitatus wouldn't let that happen. The wall of separation certainly needed to be fixed. What's your reaction to what he said?
Well, he's making some good points, but remember that what Rand is talking about tonight is Section 215.
Right.
When Section 215 went into place, the members of the Judiciary Committee and the members of the Intelligence Committee were told that there was going to be no bulk gathering of data. They were told that this would never happen. In fact, Jim Sensenbrenner, who was one of the chief co-sponsors of the Patriot Act, was told directly by the Intelligence Community that this would never happen. The Intelligence Committee started doing this, and they didn't even find out about it until some secret hearings that they had much later. So the intelligence committees didn't know about it. The Judiciary Committee didn't know about it. We are all for the security of the United States. I want the government to go after the bad guys.
So if you got rid of, let me just, because I'm running out of time, if you got rid of Section 215, which was the legal basis that was used for the collection of Americans' phone data, which I remember during the time we were told was not going to happen, that it had to be somebody outside of the country that was a suspect communicating with somebody inside the country. So if you fix that, would that get you to where you need to be?
Well, that fixes 215. We can fix 215. There's other areas of the Patriot Act that we need to fix. But what Rand is doing tonight, he's filibustering on the issue of 215, which is what the Freedom Act talks about.
Right.
We need to fix that information. The Second Circuit just ruled that it was illegal for the government to actually collect this data. And we need to make sure that we protect the safety and security of the United States. That's what we want to do as members of Congress.
Congressman, good argument on both sides. Thank you both for being with us. Coming up, an update from the U.S. Army veteran who is on the ground in Syria. He's fighting ISIS. The administration says their plan is working. Is that true? Also, former CIA Director Mike Morrell. Have we abandoned our troops? Are we stabbing them and our intelligence community in the back? Newly released documents captured in the bin Laden raid show the terror mastermind was plotting another attack against America. We'll check in with the man who killed Osama bin Laden. He's here with reaction as Hannity continues.